Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and all-around evil scientist, DT from Weatherist.com, the commander of chaos, the colonel of confusion, and the captain of catastrophe. It's time to talk about This Week in Weather, and lots to talk about here. May 13th, 14th, first. Wanted this to come out around midnight, but had some technical problems, so I'm sorry for the delay. But anyway, let's get right to it. First, there's of course a picture of my smiling face from Richmond, Virginia, and the Twitter page and the Facebook page. And our topics here, we're going to talk about the death of the cold pattern, that it's over finally, major warm up coming, and of course the possible tropical system, which the model's been hinting at for quite a while, and what it means or doesn't mean, and then also even a look at Memorial Day weekend. So let's take a look at that. All right, we'll start out by taking a look at conditions here in April, just to remind you where we've come from. Now, these shows you the precipitation here on the East Coast for the month of April. And you can see we had pretty decent rains here over the Appalachian Mountains, into West Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, down to Tennessee, Georgia. And you can see the dark greens and blues. That's a 6.5 to 8 inch range in some of these areas. Now, east of that, in the eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, much of Maryland, Delmarva into southern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, rainfall is still decent. Anywhere from 2 to 5 inches. And then the bottom right image here, this shows you, of course, your temperature, your precipitation relative to normal. And you can see again, look at this dark purple area here. That's 300% above normal. But even in the eastern areas of Virginia, North Carolina, still 150 to 200% above normal in many of these areas. So yeah, April was a pretty dry month, and then this shows you here the departure from normal for temperatures. So we had those good rains here in April. Again, in north, I just wanted to point out, I forgot to mention here that the New York State was not really that wet, and also Ohio was kind of dry too. Okay, so next here, this is the temperatures here for April, and you can see that it was a pretty cold month. I mean, obviously we know what that was like. It was felt much colder than in many places than it did back in the middle of winter, and you can see the temperature anomalies in the dark greens here on the blues. That's -4 to -6 degrees over most of the anywhere essentially from northern Virginia up into New England. Now in central and southern Virginia, North Carolina, down to Georgia, South Carolina, still around 2-3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the month. Okay, with regard to precipitation, now this is for May. This is like the first 12 days of May. We can see actual rainfall has been somewhat drier here. The pattern has begun to change, and we can see that the rainfall has not been significant. I mean, there has been some areas where we've had some decent rain. So this green color stuff in here, that's 2.5 to 3 inch rains here and here and here, but also kind of a big dry spot. And of course, that's where they got the big rain, back in April. So that's not really a problem yet. And then if you look at the percentages of normal here, you can see that that green stuff right here from DC up into central Pennsylvania, that was quite a bit above normal here, 300% above normal. Very dry here, most of Virginia, but again, it's interior down by southeast Virginia, eastern North Carolina, pretty wet. So a lot of hit and miss over the last 2 weeks here in May. Now, if we look at the last 13 days, you can see that it has, in fact, been very chilly the first half of May. And this has continued from April. We can see the anomalies here anywhere from, I guess, from -4, -5 on the coast to as much as -6 to -9 over West Virginia, Ohio, Eastern Kentucky, and Southwest Virginia. And there has been, like I pointed out on the Facebook page, a number of frosts in the Shenandoah Valley, West Virginia, the Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina mountains, and it was as much 9 to as much as maybe even 10 frosts in these areas. And so the vineyards and the fruit farms have been hit really hard. There's been a lot of damage in these areas from this. I know a lot of you don't pay that much attention to it, but it's an important agricultural resource here. And all these areas in Virginia is a big ag state. People forget that about the state, and it is quite important. And so, of course, in North Carolina. All right, now the models have been showing this tropical system here for a while. So this is the European model, actually from May 11th. Which was 2 days ago, one day, and you can see that the European model was showing our tropical system very nicely here. This was the European detecting it, and usually the European does not do that well with tropical systems, detecting them early on. So this is kind of significant, and there's a high over mid-Atlantic here. So that's what it was showing back. Again, this was Monday. Okay, and this was, valid for May 20th. So it was a long way out, but the model was definitely detecting it. And this was the GFS model here. For This is, again, this was on Monday, and this was valid for May 17th for Sunday. And you can see the model clearly has either a tropical or subtropical system. This might be both. Now, if you notice here, the way the precipitation is shaping up, it looks like it's got some sort of cold front. You can see some sort of wraparound here, so it's not really a pure tropical system, at least from the way the model is showing the precipitation here. That doesn't mean it's going to be tropical or it can't be tropical, but I think subtropical is more likely, and we'll get into that in a minute as to why. Okay, let's take a look at current conditions here. So here's our surface map. This as of this Wednesday evening, early Thursday morning. You can see a low pressure area over Kansas, Colorado. That's where the showers and thunderstorms are. High pressures over the eastern United States. And the overall pattern is showing the big change here. So our blocking pattern now is broken down, and we have the rings of the West Coast block is now cut off. You see, this was the West Coast block, and this is driving the cold air into the country. But notice the Pacific energy here. See how this has crashed into this completely? See how it's done that? And it's quite significant in that it's destroyed the ridge on the west coast, and now we're getting Pacific air flooding it. And when you're getting a trough here, that means you get a bit of a ridge here, and that's why our temperatures are beginning to warm up. Now let's take a look. Obviously, there's this is getting a lot of attention. This tropical system here. This is from the Hurricane Center. They've been talking about this for the past several days. 70% chance here. This is the Wednesday afternoon, evening update, and you can see that it definitely is talking about a tropical system or a subtropical system developing over the next 5 days. And there's no reason to go against it. It's very obvious that something's going to happen here, or not obvious, but a really high probability. The sea surface temperatures, there you go. You can see that it is pretty warm here, and for this time of year, pretty warm temperatures. They are warmer than normal. And you can see from the anomalies that here, +1, +4. Let me bring this up a little bit. Maybe you can see this map a little better here. There you go. And you can see the anomalies are pretty significant in the Southwest Atlantic of the Bahamas. If we take a look at our satellite picture, you can see that's what it looks like. There is a cloud mass down there, so there is something. And part of it is because it is associated with a bit of a shortwave here in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's a combination of, a tropical system and an aberoclinic system. And that's what we'll be looking at. Now, this is what the upper air map is showing here for Thursday night, early Friday morning. And you can see there is a bit of a system and the upper levels right there. You see this little disturbance right here, and that's what's causing that cloud mass here to form. So now we look at the jet stream map. There's our west coast ridge, okay, and like I said, it used to go down to California, but now that's been cut off. So we just have the ridge there. So it is pulling the cold air down. We're getting some cold air coming out of here. I have a monster upper low here, another one here, and another one here. 3 of them. Look at that. And this is obviously driving the Pacific energy in this way. Okay. And we can still see the cold air trying to come south. So what's going to happen is this is going to send a cold front southward up against the ridge. And we can see that here on the surface map on the bottom right. Let me bring this up. There you go. And you can see the surface map very nicely. Now this is valid here Friday morning. And you can see the cold front is very strong right here. But then look at this enormous Bermuda high right here with the ridge, associated with that ridge there, and bringing in the warm air. So it's in the 80s here. It's at 90 degrees in all of this area in here. And there's our tropical system trying to form. Now, if we look at our MJO conditions here, you'll see that the European and the GFS both have the MJO going into phase 3 and then maybe even phase 4. And that's pretty decent for tropical systems. It's not the best of the MJO phases, but it's not bad. And so, again, that's kind of supportive of something happening. And as we go further out in time, now this is the GFS map here, valid here for Saturday afternoon. That's correct. And you can see again our 3 systems here, our 3 big upper lows. There's one here, the other one is here, and the other one is here. And there's our blocking features up across Greenland and the northern Arctic region. But what's happening is that there's our tropical system here. But now we've got another piece of energy in the northern jet here, and another one in Texas. So all 3 of these features are going to interact in some form or another uh, next week. And how these three features interact is going to determine what's going to happen on the East Coast, whether this is going to be a pure tropical system, a subtropical system, a coastal storm, or move out to sea. So it's an interesting pattern here from a meteorological perspective, I must say. And it is also a pretty warm pattern for the eastern half of the country. I mean, outside of this little tropical system here, if you were to ignore the tropical system itself, this is a pretty big ridge here over the eastern United States, a pretty warm pattern. And notice the northern jet stream is pushed far to the north. So we are getting some warm temperatures here. All right. Um, Now these take a look at the GFS surface maps and you can see how it develops. So let's look at this one in the upper right first. This is now for Saturday, and then again on the bottom is for Sunday night, Monday. And you can see there's our system very nicely, pretty well developed on the GFS. Maybe the GFS is overdoing it, but maybe not. It's over the Gulf Stream. It's definitely got potential. And there it is, very powerful looking system for late May. Definitely at this point, that looks tropical over the Gulf Stream, no doubt about it. So this may be one of these fixtures where it goes subtropical, tropical, and I'm sure on the Twitter world and the social media, you can see people screaming at each other, "It's tropical, it's subtropical, it's this, it's that, whatever." That's what meteorologists like to do in debate. But the other thing to notice is the front. Now this is the front here for Saturday, and you can see the front is still to the north, so it's still quite warm in Virginia, all the way down to Georgia and Alabama. And then this is the front here for Sunday night. Now notice you have that low pressure area here and the cold front, and there's a second low right here. There it is. Now the big cold high coming down, driving the cold air out of Canada. So a lot of rain, thunderstorms in New York State and Pennsylvania and Ohio. So Sunday looks pretty stormy in all these areas in here. It definitely does in the Ohio Valley. There's our tropical system. Now is it going to come inland? Is it going to be kicked out to sea? A lot of different possibilities here. Most of the models seem to want to indicate, and you'll see this why, that this is the GFS. The upper low comes south. What happens is, again, these two features merge. Let me point them out so you can see it. So this one here merges, and this one merges, and we get a big trough here when these two features merge. Goes to here, this goes to here, we got a big trough here, and that captures this system and kind of pulls it towards the coast. And you'll see what I'm talking about just one second. Here's the upper level map now, valid for Monday night, Tuesday morning. And well, we can see a lot of important features here. So first, there's our monster trough on the west coast, very impressive system here. Here's our big ridge running from Texas to Minnesota into eastern Quebec, Canada. Pretty warm in all this area. And it would be warm on the east coast, but this upper level low is coming down. Okay, very pronounced closed upper low, and there's our tropical system. So these two features are going to Fujiwara according to the GFS. Now the Fujiwara means, of course, when you have one low here, the other low here, and they spin around each other. So that's kind of what the GFS is indicating. Very interesting scenario. You can see it here, a little surface map. This is the 18Z GFS, and you can see this is for Tuesday morning, and we have the main low is off the coast. The tropical system is off the coast, and then the second system with the upper low, which is here, moves to the coast here. So now you have this system and this system. Now, is this going to turn out to sea, or is it going to pivot towards New England? And this is going to swing out this way. A lot of different possibilities here. This is very interesting pattern from a meteorologist's point of view. This is something we want to look at for days and days and days. So this could be something, could be a lot of studies and research about in the weeks and months to come if this plays out right. Now the GFS Ensemble looks pretty consistent with this. You look at this and you go, is that really going to happen? Maybe you have some doubts. Okay, well, it's the GFS, but look at the GFS Ensemble here. This is the 12Z in the upper left, and the bottom one is the 18Z. And they both show the same thing for Monday morning. Very tight cluster. Look at that. Very strong signal here and here off the southeast coast. And there's the primary low there and there. So it looks like that's going to happen. Now again, the question is the tropical system going to go out to sea? Is it going to turn to Cape Cod? Is it going to turn into New Jersey? I don't know. A lot of different possibilities here. I mean, I can make a guess. I think what's going to happen, but let's finish looking at the rest of the data first. All right. So now this is the European model, and we can see the European model is doing the same sort of thing. There are two distinct pieces of energy: southern energy, northern energy, tropical system. Right? Okay, we know that. There's our big upper low here, another one here, and another one here. Again, driving the energy into the west coast. So this is a very big ridge here. If you look at the look at the orange and the all in here. This is a very strong ridge. It's these little features are depressing it, but overall it's a pretty warm ridge and a pretty warm pattern. Now this here's the surface low. You can see it's valid 81 hours. Again, this is Sunday night, Monday. You can see it developing off the Florida coast very nicely there. And now here what happens here, this is Monday night, and this is the same sort of thing that GFS is showing. We have now notice the upper low here is not as strong as the GFS. That's because the GFS has this bias of overdoing the upper lows. So we can clearly see that. So let's take a look at that. There's the European, and this here is the GFS. See the difference? Yeah, that's quite a bit of difference. That's much stronger overall high. You can see the difference here. So, okay, so we saw that. There we go. There we go. And that's the correct map. This one's over. This is over Toronto, not over Ohio, and it's not nearly as deep. You can see that. But the principle is the same thing. In general, the principle is the same concept. There's a tropical system. There's the upper low. How are they going to interact? And notice the ridge here. We actually have a bit of a dome right here. You see that very pronounced ridge. A lot of heat in the plains in the western corn belt, upper Mississippi Valley, going into central Canada, and a big trough here in California, bringing the cool air down the west coast. Okay, so we look at the surface map here. On the European, there's 114 hours. This is early Monday morning, and there it is, 138 hours. Now notice the European is actually beginning to weaken it a little bit here as the systems begin to merge with the upper low. And then you can see that the European does. Now the European has a deep closed upper low. What's happened is that the two features have merged, and you have a deep closed upper low on the European. Very powerful. Now that kind of looks like the GFS here, but it just does it further to the east. So again, the models are not that far off. They're in pretty good agreement on this. But there's the European. You can see the closed 500 lows over what the Delmarva. You know, you look at this the winter time, you go, wow, that's a hell of a storm. And you can see the huge ridge over the plains into the Great Lakes, and another big trough here on the west coast. There's our ridge. Look at this baby. And there's a big trough on the west coast. And there's our huge, very intense upper low. And if you look at the European the surface map, look what it does. There's the coastal low, and we have off the coast right here. This is valid Monday night, Tuesday morning. And then there's the primary low with the cold front here. So, and the cold front itself, as you can see, runs like this. And there's big high pressure right here coming, trying to drive the cold air southward. So, a very interesting interaction. And then what happens is, if you go next on the European, this is now for Tuesday night, you can see they've coalesced into one big system just off the New Jersey coast. A lot of heavy rain for New Jersey, New York, eastern Pennsylvania, all of New England, really driving the moisture into the coast here. Not so much Virginia, North Carolina. They get some rain, but then you can clearly see the cold front of the European is off the coast here at this point. So we get some rain in Virginia, North Carolina, but not that much. Most of the rain is up in here in New England. Okay, and then if you look at the European Ensemble, now this is the 18Z, and we notice what this is doing. This actually seems to want to have a little more of the members driving closer to the coast. So you still have a big cluster out here, but also some indication of the cluster this way. So again, very unresolved complex system here. Are these two systems going to merge? Are they going to Fujiwara? Very interesting. Temperatures, just to show you how warm it's going to get here. This is Friday. Up from Philadelphia all the way down to Georgia, quite warm for this time of year. This is the European here for Saturday. You can see again the warm temperatures, pretty much south of, from Fredericksburg to DC southward. Very warm temperatures, 90s all the way down into Georgia and North Florida Panhandle. And then this is a Monday. And then after this, obviously, we have the coastal system, the cold front coming down, the rain, so the temperature of the heat's going to break, at least for the time being. Now, longer term, what happens is this is going to get driven off the coast. Now, how do I know that? How do I know that this system is going to get driven off the coast? How do we know that's going to happen? Well, we know that's going to happen because of this. All the models show here by the middle of next week, by this time next week, this major trough here on the west coast is going to push the ridge east. Remember the ridge was over here? Now look where it is, here. just the west of the Appalachians. So that's going to push any coastal system well off the coast here by next Wednesday and Thursday before we head to Memorial Day weekend. So that is the good news, and this means very warm temperatures going into Memorial Day. This is really warm here in all of Memorial Day with this a very powerful ridge. That's a good sign if you want a warm Memorial Day. And the GFS is showing the same sort of thing. Now the ridge does not quite go that far north, but it's still quite pronounced. Now what's noticeable here on both of these models is, well, here's our trough in the southern jet stream, but the northern jet is still showing a ridge here in Canada. So that's still driving the cold air southward, which means you're going to have cold fronts trying to push up against this ridge, and you're going to see it could be pretty wet here in the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley for Memorial Day weekend. Now, not so much Virginia or Kentucky, Missouri, the deep south and southeastern states, but right in this whole area, these cold front could make it a pretty wet and stormy Memorial Day weekend, unfortunately, for those areas. Um, Now, this is the European ensemble showing the same sort of thing. You can see again, there's our trough in the southern jet stream. There's the ridge over the Midwest and the East Coast. But here's our ridge here in the northern jet stream, sending cold air southward, high pressures coming out of Canada, okay, trying to drive the cold fronts into the Great Lakes. And then finally, we take a look at the pattern here. This is now for coming out of Memorial Day weekend, going into the end of the month. And actually wants to turn the pattern a little cooler again. We're getting some indicating a little blocking trying to develop here in Greenland maybe. And look at the ridge. The ridge is pretty strong in western Canada, and we get a bit of a trough here over the Great Lakes, eastern Canada. So it might turn a little cooler again as we go to the end of May in the beginning of June. So we'll see. Anyway, that's the report. So again, sorry for the delay. We'll see what happens with this system as it develops. Very interesting. I think it's going to remain mostly a subtropical if I had to guess. I think the presence of the upper low coming down from the Great Lakes, whether it's as strong as the GFS or the European, I think that's going to keep it a subtropical system. But it might become purely tropical for a day or two early next week as it sits over the southwest Atlantic and the pressure drops down to maybe 1,000 millibars, 995. It could be purely tropical for a couple of days, and then go back to being a coastal storm or a subtropical system. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll talk to you soon.